So the ship of Theseus, or Teseo, and the problem of the self. The famous paradox of the ship of Theseus, handed down by Plutarch, poses a seemingly simple question. If a ship is replaced piece by piece until none of its original parts remain, is it still the same ship, or has it become another? This ancient aporia is not merely a logical exercise. It is, in fact, a radical metaphor for the problem of personal identity. For the same fate befalls us. Our bodies renew their cells. Our brains constantly remodel their synapses. Our memories are rewritten each time we recall them. Nothing of what constitutes the child we once were remains intact, and yet we continue to affirm, I am me, right? And I continue to be me. So what is this I, this myself? Philosophy has offered different answers. The Cartesian tradition conceived of a substantial core, an invariant cogito ergo sum, an absolute foundation. Contemporary neuroscience, on the contrary, suggests that there is no stable center, but rather a self-model, as Thomas Metzinger argues, a construct dynamically generated by the brain to integrate perception, memory, and action. In this view, the self is not an entity, but a functional device. So self-consciousness would therefore be a recursive process. The brain not only represents the world, but also represents itself while representing the world. It is within this self-referential loop that the sense of identity emerges, an identity that survives change precisely because it is continually updated. The paradox deepens if we consider Husserl phenomenology. You know Husserl, the German philosopher. So Husserlian phenomenology says that the self is not a substance, but the unifying pole of intentional acts, the temporal continuity of consciousness weaving together memory, presence, and anticipation. In other words, there is no immobile self. There is the flow that recognizes itself. And thus, as with the ship of Theseus, identity does not reside in the materials, the planks, or the cells in the human body, but in the form of the process, in the informational pattern that endures through transformation. Self-consciousness can therefore be understood as non-informational flame. It is not identical to the molecules that fuel it, but consists in their dynamic order. What persists is not substance, but the continuity of the self-organizing process we call the self. In conclusion, the paradox of the ship of Theseus reveals that the self is not an object that resists time, but a function that perpetually reconstructs itself. Personal identity means persisting through change, like a pattern that outlives its material supports. And if this is true, then the subjective experience of the world is never the voice of an immutable self, but the outcome of an ongoing negotiation between memory, perception, and anticipation. A fragile stability we call self-consciousness.